50 years of Queen and Camera, now on BBC Two, the royal family's mixed television career.
The second Elizabethan age coincided with the arrival of television.
Television has made it possible for many of you to see me in your homes on Christmas Day.
The new medium dutifully covered the grand occasions, both the joyous moments and the sombre ones of the Queen's reign. But the producers wanted to reveal more.
I want to ask you one thing in particular, because you've been landed with it. This nickname, Randy Andy.
They wanted to dig deeper.
Will you become king?
Well, I would certainly imagine so.
Very deep indeed.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
As the BBC pulled out all the stops to help celebrate the Queen's Jubilee, we present the inside story of the love-hate relationship between 2 of the nation's most powerful institutions, monarchy and television. Spring 1953, and the build-up to the coronation had reached its final stages. Behind the scenes of meticulous preparation, a debate raged which would have long-term significance. What part should the revolutionary new technology of television play in this age-old ritual? The big question was whether the cameras should be allowed to cover the crowning itself. Those who worked in the infant medium were aware that this was a golden opportunity not to be missed.
We were all very, very apprehensive because we all realised that this was the opportunity for television, which had been very much the baby of the BBC, and I knew that television had to become the major media, and the coronation could be the catalyst for that.
The answer was no. And the decision came from the very top itself.
The Queen was very against the service being televised. And she wasn't the only one. I mean, a lot of people were, because it was a religious service where she was giving herself really to the nation. I think that they weren't used to television and that they just felt it was too intrusive. They thought it was a sort of private moment.
Well, that seems to have tied up...
But Peter Dimmock and his team, which included commentator Richard Dimbleby, refused to accept no for an answer. They persuaded the palace to give them one last chance.
Yes, it's in the Dimbleby diary. Excellent. Barry, you've been doing the...
Dimmock was aware that officials worried that cameras might spoil the occasion. He set out to allay their fears.
I put a 2-inch lens into the camera, and they all looked at the monitor and they said, oh, this doesn't seem too bad, because this rule of no close-ups of the Queen and no camera closer than 30 feet. So they were all muttering amongst themselves and looked, but thank goodness they didn't ask to see a larger lens. So I switched the camera off as soon as I possibly could and then said, well, is it all right now? They said, well, we'll let you know.
They said yes. The BBC vans were already on their way.
While crowds pack the route, countless millions of people, both at home and abroad, will be sitting down to watch the historic event on television. The BBC's television outside broadcast facilities, including a score of cameras, have been concentrated in London.
A vast audience sat transfixed. The maids of honour were conscious that the eyes of the nation were upon them.
We were waiting for her to take her out of the carriage. And she looked fantastic, I must say. She looked wonderful. And she just turned round to us and said, "Are you ready, girls?" And off we went. I was very excited and rather nervous because I knew that every movement we made was being watched by millions of people.
Richard Dimbleby effortlessly hit just the right tone.
And now, the Queen is divested of her plain white garment worn for the anointing. The Dean of Westminster, helped by the Mistress of the Robes, puts upon the Queen the Colobium Sindonis, which, translated, means the little gown of linen.
I would not have had any other commentator, because he was absolutely number one. People often used to say he was rather pompous. All right, perhaps he was a bit pompous, but he was a great royalist, and what was so important was that he would do 100% pre-preparation and only use on the air 10% of it.
The moment of the Queen's crowning is come.
Even on this first great occasion, the producers began to suggest improvements.
We thought this is a piece of theatre, and therefore we want to end on a high point. And I said, well, what about something like Land of Hope and Glory? That should be pretty stirring.
History has been written and sung here today.
A new queen had been crowned, and perhaps more significantly, a new powerful force, television, had entered our lives.
But never before have so many seen the crowning of the sovereign, or so many shared in her dedication in this Abbey Church.
The coronation was vital to make television respectable. It also had quite a social change, because if you went to dinner parties before the coronation, people would say, well, have you got television? And they'd say, oh, well, yes, I think the servants have got it. And immediately after the coronation, yes, of course we've got television.
Television had made the monarchy more accessible, and royal pictures made for popular television. The Queen's traditional radio Christmas message was now broadcast on the box.
This is London. Her Majesty the Queen, speaking from her home at Sandringham, sends a Christmas message to her people throughout the Commonwealth.
Television has made it possible for many of you to see me in your homes on Christmas Day. My own family often gather round to watch television, as they are at this moment, and that is how I imagine you now. I very much hope that this new medium will make my Christmas message more personal and direct.
TV's appetite for all things royal was now voracious.
Who saw Queen Mother first?
Royal tours were a special treat.
And here, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, home to everyone's applause from a triumphal tour.
When the Queen Mum returned from North America, Richard Dimbleby and the cameras were there to welcome her home.
Queen Elizabeth wearing a coat of a deep, rather lovely shade of grey-blue, a colour which is very fond, and a little flowered hat of the same colour.
But the times were about to change. In the irreverent 60s, the Dimbleby style of commentary provided an irresistible target.
The sleek royal blue hull of the barge is sliding gracefully, almost regally, beneath the waters of the pool of London. Perhaps the lip readers amongst you will be able to make out what Prince Philip has just said to the captain of the barge looked to me like, oh dear, I think we are sinking. And now the Queen, smiling radiantly, is swimming for her life. Her Majesty's wearing a silk ensemble in canary yellow.
Even the mainstream programmes began to question the deference given to the royals.
Beyond the bars, Buckingham Palace stands aloof. Its intimate workings, a dark unknown. A barricade of silence and formality keeps the onlooker at a distance, the barrier contributing to its aura of mystery.
The Queen was treated as if she was divine.
We can't hear what the Queen says. Microphones are not permitted near her. The bystander, however close, is always at a distance. Only those directly involved participate.
Here she comes, she's all in pink.
If the camera edges too close, the royal detective places himself between it and the Queen.
She looked really nice, didn't she? She did, yeah. To what, when you see her on the television, she seems to be miserable.
Tense.
Miserable. And tense, yeah. Yes. But she looked really nice.
In 1967, the Queen appointed a new press secretary. William Heseltine's job was to ease the strains that were beginning to emerge in the relationship between Crown and television.
1, 2, 3, 4. Well, it looks like one bus for Innercap and one bus for the school.
Well, we would like to go into the tree planting.
He felt greater access was inevitable, but by rationing it out, the royal family could still maintain control.
Copies of Prince Philip's speech, which he'll be... The Queen and Prince Philip had to decide at that time whether they were going to allow TV to control their agenda or whether they would put it on their terms. And this, I think, was what we established in 1968-69. The response to the various requests for facilities was of such a kind as to set the agenda from our side rather than simply responding to proposals which were made by TV people.
In 1969, viewers saw the first fruit of this new policy, a BBC documentary which showed the royal family as never before.
What's this for?
Well, it's for helping things, turning things over and things like that.
Me turning them over? What, for you to do?
Well, it's difficult, yes. We've got a better device there.
For the royal Svengali, there was a master plan.
What was in my mind, at least at that time, was that people had no kind of notion, really, of the personalities of the Queen and Prince Philip and their two elder children. They'd been very carefully protected and shielded from media attention while they were at school. People knew virtually nothing about them. Indeed, I don't think it's going too far to say that there was a sort of public perception that they were rather dull children, perhaps even slightly retarded. And this, of course, was very far from being the case.
Very little happening to them.
Today, images like this look awkward, but at the time, they were breathtaking.
The barbecue sequence was one of the earliest things we shot, so it sticks in one's brain, because this is the first time that we had the family.
The salad is ready.
Good. And that was when we all started thinking, we have a chance of making this film, because everybody was so relaxed and nobody played to the camera and nobody shied from the camera. And it was one of those breakthrough sequences. And I think it says something an awful lot at the time about the family. Suddenly there were people.
Not everything went smoothly. The crew were using the latest lightweight handheld equipment, which worked best close up.
They all found it very difficult because it was so different, I think, from anything that had happened before, to confront a camera which was at their shoulder and a microphone 2 inches in front of their face. And there were one or two outbursts along the way, but did they have to come quite so close? I think what they all found difficult about the sound was the fact that when you're seen making casual conversation with people, it inevitably sounds very banal.
Most of the scenes would have occurred in the natural run of things, but one or two were specially set up.
This is what he really would like.
Yes, you always go straight from there.
Yes. Well, would you like to go and get...
The sequence up in Balmoral, where the Queen took Prince Edward to buy sweets, was definitely contrived. I had to pre-light the sweet shop. So this was all pre-arranged. There was a slight embarrassing moment when, of course, the Queen doesn't carry money. So I loaned her £0.50.
Change, this is all I got.
That's all right. Thank you.
Bag. Yeah, thanks very much. You are.
The children were very friendly. Edward, being the youngest, was heard to say on occasion, "Mummy, is it all right if I go and play with the film men?" So Edward came and played with the film men.
Practically a saturation cover of the visit in the local paper.
The crew were even allowed to accompany the Queen on the royal flight.
That one's quite nice.
Sports parlours. I don't think you can have featured very often on sporting pages as you do today. And there are one or two pictures of the embassy reception and the samba.
Oh yes, look, those dogs. I rather think, we ought to have a pair of dogs like that. They're very decorative, aren't they?
Certainly a bit more spectacular than corgis, aren't they?
Well, they look spectacular. They're not nearly so nice.
You had to be very careful if you were inclined to make jokes at the expense of the corgis.
Peter Bartlett and the crew were with the royal family on and off for about a year.
At the end of that year, nobody, as far as I was concerned on the crew, was ever asked any personal questions. Were we married? Did we live in London? Had we got any children? That sort of thing. And looking at that whole environment of the royal family, that you wouldn't be asked that kind of question. It just doesn't happen. I always say it was rather like having the plumbers in, and we were the plumbers.
Over 20 million viewers watched the first transmission of the royal family. The documentary had opened the door to other programme makers, but the royals still had a heavy foot firmly wedged behind it. The investiture of the Prince of Wales provided the next big opportunity to get the royal message across.
There can be no more fitting, no more dramatic setting in the whole of Wales than this royal town of Carnarvon. It was here that the first Prince of Wales was born 700 years ago. It was here that Edward, the eldest son of George V, was invested as prince and presented to his people in 1911.
The setting was ancient, the thinking modern.
It was a time when the monarchy had to change, and Heseltine was determined to change it. The relationship between the monarchy and the people. And they were determined to use television. And they did use television.
And one wants to think of it as a theatre in the round, rather than...
The set was even designed by a royal in-law, Princess Margaret's husband, Lord Snowdon.
Absolutely plain slate. But the important thing about the desk is so that cameras can come in from behind and from in front.
I wanted to have every possible camera angle so that when the cameras were looking onto a close-up of the Queen, for example, there would be nothing obstructing that view.
Now this splendid medieval amphitheatre is almost filled, ready for the arrival of Her Majesty the Queen.
Snowdon went further and dreamt up a special outfit for his own role. As Constable of Carnarvon Castle, it was his job to present the key of the castle to the Queen.
I did have a sort of uniform, but he was totally unmilitary. And it was just dark green with no decoration, no buttons. So it was kind of 60s.
I thought it looked a little inappropriate. Unkinder people than I described him as Robin Hood or a bellboy from a... But however, I didn't lend myself to those descriptions.
Snowdon accepts no responsibility for the Crown.
The Crown was something else apart. I had absolutely nothing to do with that at all. I don't know where this crown came from. I think it was terrible. Absolutely awful.
Despite the headgear, the investiture was deemed a great success. It seemed rooted in a distant, idyllic past, but had been put together with the idea of attracting a modern TV audience. The royals had pulled it off.
It was invented for television, and it was invented for a worldwide audience. And in the event, they were proved right. 200 million people across the world saw Prince Charles having a crown put on his head. An invented crown on an invented throne in an invented situation.
In the 1970s, the royal family further consolidated their TV image. Princess Anne was accompanied on safari by Blue Peter's Val Singleton.
Little crown. Oh, look, yes. Some rather super shows here, too. Do you prefer the sort of outdoor sports? Well, if you're you an spend outdoor girl, most of your life either sitting about or standing about talking to people, it's quite nice to get out, Yeah. you know. I think if one does it as much as possible. Also keeps you reasonably fit.
I find the life as a pilot extremely useful, and you will pick up all sorts of things which will be helpful for the rest of one's life. I always prepare to learn from everything.
Prince Charles shared his experience learning to be a naval pilot. And at the end of the decade, the Queen allowed us and grandson Peter Phillips a peek at some of her precious treasures, such as this doll's house.
In there. Careful. Careful. Thank you. That's the right time now, is it?
The couple who kept a secret for 3 weeks. Lady Diana says she's blissfully happy, and the future king says he's positively delighted.
The news that the heir to the throne was finally getting hitched generated a fresh wave of demands from the television companies. As ever, the palace exercised firm control, especially since the latest recruit to the royal family was pretty green when it came to dealing with hacks. Andrew Gardner from ITN and the BBC's Angela Rippon discussed the eve of wedding interview with the Queen's press secretary.
You avoid having certain questions asked by a process of gentle persuasion, but I don't think it really came to that in that particular instance, because the sorts of questions which the interviewers wanted to ask were the sorts of questions that the wider public wanted them to ask.
I remember I sat in front of Shay. He was across his desk from us, and Andrew was here on my right. And he said, right, now, I just want to tell the pair of you that you will not deviate at all from the line of questioning. You have to remember, you are here to discuss the presents, you are not here to discuss anything else, and if you deviate from that line of questioning, I will stop the interview. You've drawn up this lovely list of presents. Did you get together in deciding what was going to go on that list?
Yeah, it was me. I had great fun going around. And my list's completely empty. It's all come to us. It's marvellous.
Yes. Yes. So you're not going to get stuck with 2 toasters or something like that?
Well, I don't know about that. We've got 2 houses to fill, so...
I could have quite happily strangled Michael Shay. Because what he had done by putting those restrictions on us was, first of all, not only stopped us from being able to see the true Diana, more importantly, it had made her feel sufficiently suffocated so that she wasn't able to be herself. And we never saw that wonderful joy and happiness of the bride-to-be on the eve of her wedding.
What we see so far is hundreds of yards of veil, ivory, silk, tulle veil, spangled with little tiny bits of mother of pearl, glittering with the Spencer family tiara of diamonds holding it in place.
My main memory of the wedding is the moment when Diana got out of the carriage, and she'd been sat in that carriage with the dress all crumpled up, and when she got up, it was creased beyond description. And we had this big close-up of her as she got out. And in my ear, I heard the director say to the cameraman, "Pull out! Pull out! For crying out loud, pull out!" Because the world was seeing a crumpled frock.
Di mania became a feature of any tour she and Charles undertook.
On the outside, it's all pomp and ceremony. The princess comes to Canada for the first time. Canada meets the princess. But what matters really is the impact on the people. Not all the people, because in 84-degree temperatures, some of them just don't get to see what they came to see. But among those who succeed shoulder high, the impact is as striking as she is.
Oh, look at that shot! Can you see her? Oh, yeah! Take it. I can't! It's beautiful.
She and not him became the focus of the cameras, but behind the glamorous images, the royal news managers still pulled the strings.
It was all what I would call contrived news, because you were so restricted. You were restricted in camera position, you were restricted on microphones. I mean, it was choreographed from start to finish. Royal reporting, the hardest thing is to get the right tone. You're either going to be too bland and deferential, or you're going to be impudent and negative. There's a very fine line to walk down, and that's what we tried to do. Every word has to be weighed very carefully. I mean, not for whether it's going to cause offence to the palace, but whether it's worth putting in. And so many of the pictures are so routine. I mean, you can die of boredom, and one of the difficulties is to maintain an interest.
The contact they had before plunging into a routine round of engagements. These began with a tree planting and from then on got ever more tedious.
Most unusual photograph.
Mr. and Mrs. Stuart Hodgson. An irreducible part of the ritual at each stop is the formal black tie reception. The balance of the programme on a royal tour, defying all attempts to lighten it, still lies on the side of these rather ponderous affairs.
If you're frozen out by the palace, you'll have a really hard time. And they are quite capable of turning round to your editors. This has happened in the past. No names, no pactoral, and saying, such and such a person is not up to the job. Such and such a person is being too rude about my hat. Such and such a person doesn't understand what they're saying. Not exactly off with their head, but I don't want that person around anymore. And the editor's going to listen to that. And it doesn't have to be spoken, but the correspondents know that.
But if the journalists could be kept under control, the royal children were another matter.
Well, welcome, ma'am, but it's awfully good of you to turn up, really, because the last time we were due to meet, I, in fact, let you down rather badly, didn't I?
Yes, there was a bit of an empty space beside me at lunch.
Yes.
On that one day.
Pressing engagement elsewhere, ma'am, I'm afraid. But
there was one period of time in the mid-80s where things got a bit out of hand, and members, particularly young members of the royal family, were too willing to go on stage.
A particular problem was chat shows.
The thing about chat shows, of course, is that they are usually live, and you cannot, in the last resort, control everything that is asked and answered. And any decent press secretary, like any spin doctor in today's world, wants to avoid that like the plague. And I say this very honestly. You want to control as much as you possibly can, because you don't know what accidents might or might not happen.
I wanted to ask you one thing in particular, because you've been landed with it. This nickname that you have.
I'm listening. Which nickname?
I feel a bit embarrassed. Randy Andy.
My close friends call me Randy.
Andrew made perfect material for a popular satirical puppet show.
Contraception comes in handy, or I'd have more children than Princess Di. I like to have a lie down wherever I go, 'cause I'm just a prince who can't say no.
No, that one.
One of the royal children even embarked on a television career. Edward's first project was to produce a special edition of It's a Knockout. Others were less enthusiastic.
I think most of the senior people in the household felt it was a bad idea, and I certainly gave my opinion to that effect. And, it took place just after the unfortunate departure of Prince Edward from the Royal Marines, which had given him quite a lot of rather bad publicity. And I think both the Queen and Prince Philip felt that he had to be humoured a little, perhaps, at that time. And this was an enterprise which he had embarked on and made his own, and neither the Queen nor Prince Philip felt able to tell him not to do it.
In 1987, Prince Edward arranged for a gaggle of celebrities to join him and some of the family for a mock medieval tournament at Alton Towers.
Yeah. Are you all fit and ready for all this?
Yeah, I think so.
Been doing a lot of training?
I'm always in training.
19 million switched on, but it's something that Prince Edward would prefer to forget. We are not allowed to show it.
Well, I think it went overboard in the direction of showing members of the royal family in a very undignified situation and making the distinction between themselves and showbiz people very hard to see or recognise. I remember wincing as I watched it and wishing that it hadn't taken place.
The press had been forced to watch the show outside on a monitor in a tent. At the end, they were in no mood to flatter the royal producer.
And I know the captains have enjoyed themselves. I only hope that you've enjoyed yourselves. Have you? Well, thanks for sounding so bloody enthusiastic. What have you been doing in here all day? Have you been watching it? Yeah. What did you think of it? Thanks.
I thought it was great.
Trust me, darling, trust me, it worked on it, sir. It's sorry, telejargon, I keep forgetting you're not in the biz. It's a royal knockout, that's what we called it.
Yeah, funny, we called it an embarrassing load of rubbish.
Shut up! When I'm on set,
That period at Spitting Image was the period where the younger generation of the royal family got it spectacularly wrong. From It's a Royal Knockout to Andrew appearing on chat shows. They wanted to be celebrities. Which is a sort of terrible thing to want to be, and particularly bad for the royal family because they were so useless at it.
The next royal extravaganza in 1992 was a far classier number, starring as it did the head of the firm, the Queen herself, and showing her life and work. The palace still maintained their editorial control, but the documentary's producer was determined to do something different.
What I felt constantly at the back of my mind was, how can I get to this person who is the monarch? How can I reveal something of her character, of her nature, of her style, her personality, while at the same time obviously showing her at work.
The Queen never gives interviews, but Murtzoff got round this by persuading her to record her thoughts in sound only. The words were then combined with suitable pictures.
Well, I've always had rather a sort of feeling that the letters are rather personal to oneself, you know, because people write them thinking that I'm going to open them and read them.
We managed to catch her in her sitting room in the evening, just the sound recordist and myself. And we just talked on the sofa together. And in those circumstances, you get wonderful flow of her own thoughts.
I don't open all of them, obviously, because I don't have time to do that. But it does certainly give me, I suppose, because one gets perhaps even sort of a bit more remote, it gives one an idea of what is worrying people and what actually they feel that I could do to help. Who's miles behind? Oh.
There's two longs at the back of that.
In one scene, the Queen's enthusiasm finally overcame her reticence. With filming and editing complete, the moment came which every producer dreads, showing the film to his subjects. In this case, Her Majesty and His Royal Highness.
This was going to be the moment in which either it was going to be accepted or not, and we were on absolute edge.
Although the Queen gave us a fantastic amount of access, many other members of the royal family weren't so keen, and that her husband had not been very keen about the whole project and didn't really want to have a lot to do with it.
One of the questions was, well, how is the Queen likely to react? And I remember asking before, well, how will I know what her response is? And I was told, you will know. She will not tell you. She cannot tell you. She cannot tell you, I love the film. It's just not possible for her to do that, but you will know.
But he couldn't go to Baghdad like
Why
you
not,
could.
ma'am? I went to Baghdad.
I know you did. You're expendable now.
Yes, I'm expendable. Yes, that's
You're
true.
expendable.
After about 4 or 5 minutes into a film, there was a nice humorous moment, and the Duke of Edinburgh burst out laughing. And you could kind of feel the shoulders of all the production team relax thereafter, as we all thought, well, so far, so good.
We got to the end, and we all stood up, the lights came on, and I thought, well, what happens now? And there was a silence, and I said, well, we've got some tea here. Ma'am, would you like to stay for some tea? And she said, yes, that would be very nice. And I was told afterwards, that was the moment you knew. Had she not liked the film, she would have swept out, and that would have been that.
The fizz and fizzle of public debate about the future of the monarchy echoes down through the history of 1,000 years.
Any residual royal reluctance to appear before the cameras seemed to have vanished completely. Prince Charles decided that he too needed to raise his profile.
When the sovereign dies, and if you are alive and healthy, will you become king?
Well, I would certainly imagine so. I mean, it's not going to be because I'm going to decide I'm not going to do it. As far as I'm concerned, in the ordinary course of events, that is what would happen. With my garter banner up above, you see, my grandmother's next to me, the Duke of Kent.
For the first time ever, editorial control was ceded to a programme maker, albeit one whom the Prince fully trusted, Richard Dimbleby's son, Jonathan.
I went into it with some caution, because it is a hiding to nothing making a film about royalty. Because on the one hand, you're slaughtered for being impertinent by some. On the other hand, you're regarded as a deferential creep by others. And some of the films had appeared to be rather deferential. And I was not willingly going to participate in that process.
But the filming was overtaken by events. Rumours of strains in Charles's marriage were beginning to surface in the press. The programme makers were faced with the difficult decision of whether or not to proceed.
I felt that to stop would have really been completely feeble. It would have been to suggest that those rumours and the scurrilous revelations about his private life should somehow inhibit one from making a serious film about an important public figure. It just seemed to me to be crazy and cowardly.
The massive media presence during the prince's visit to Mexico reflected the feverish public interest in his failing marriage. A point picked up by Charles in Dimbleby's film.
I find you can predict sometimes, almost infallibly, what they're going to say. And that's, it can be slightly debilitating. Because I wonder whether, if you take the oxen and have a go at ploughing like the man offered me. I mean, the headline you can imagine is Prince ploughs lonely furrow, or something like that, you know what I mean? Or I'll plough my own furrow, says Charles. That's the usual thing.
Dimbleby decided that he had no option but to ask Charles about his infidelity.
I felt that it would have been very difficult to have produced a credible film by that stage if I hadn't done. It really would have been Hamlet, without the ghost. It would have been a film that people said all the time, why didn't he ask him about that? And then they would have discounted everything that I had asked him about.
That bit of the film is now locked away, but its repercussions are still felt.
The Prince of Wales was said today to have no regrets about the ITV documentary last night in which he admitted he had been unfaithful and talked about the possibility of divorce.
As the Prince of Wales resumed traditional royal duties this morning...
I believe that in general, if you've got a problem in your family life, the last thing you need to do is parade it in front of the world's eyes. And I think that the Prince of Wales's interview with Dimbleby was a mistake, and I suspect he thinks that too in retrospect.
Princess Diana's Panorama interview was seen as a response to her husband's TV revelations. Like him, she ceded editorial control to filmmakers she trusted.
The only thing she asked for was that we allow her to tell the Queen herself, or to tell the Queen's office herself, prior to the press or anybody else finding out about it.
She gave the interview on condition that the chairman of the BBC wasn't told, the chairman of the BBC being Dukey Hussey, whose wife, Lady Susan, was a lady-in-waiting to the Queen, and they were both very close to the royal family. And the reason she had said that was that she felt there would be an attempt to stop it at one end or the other if he did know about it.
The editing was done in total secrecy at the Grand Hotel in Eastbourne. Light years away from the gossipy, intense, backbiting world that some say is a feature of the BBC.
Given the level of press interest in her, given that the Panorama office, for all the huge strength of the journalist in there, which remains a great credit to the BBC, is a piranha tank, like most of these places, and I say that with great affection, it was simply not an option to cut it anywhere near the Panorama office or in my judgment, BBC premises, simply because you didn't need a degree to work out that the interest in the content of the interview was going to be very, very, very substantial.
The night before the existence of the interview was made public, the tapes were secretly moved to unoccupied BBC offices in central London. The building was first swept for bugs and round-the-clock security laid on.
You might think, well, how bizarrely paranoid. But once the fact that we had the interview was announced, the press went wild, and the hunt was on to first of all find out where the interview was, physically, where the tapes were, and if possible to get hold of the content of them.
The programme lived up to its billing. It was dynamite.
Friends on my husband's side were indicating that I was again unstable, sick, and should be put in a home of some sort in order to get better. I was almost an embarrassment.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
It was a member of the royal family giving us an insight to the workings of our royal family and the monarchy and the system, which is just kind of shut off to us for most of the time. You can speculate, you can dream, you can imagine, but to have an insider deliver it to you in quite those terms is really unprecedented.
She says she only wanted to put her side of the story. Is the House of Windsor so flimsy it can be shaken by a single interview? You presumably are one of the people she called the enemy.
Well, I hope not, but I can't account for what the Princess was talking about when she referred to those matters, for example, like mail interception. I mean, I simply don't know what she's talking about, and about telephones being tapped and all that. It really is the sort of advanced stages of paranoia.
Well, relations became pretty frosty for a while after that, for quite a long time. Clearly the palace were very upset and kind of apoplectic.
This was a piece of journalism. And ultimately, the BBC owes its primary duty to the truth and to objectivity and to independence, but it does that in the name of the audience. It would have been a betrayal of the audience, ultimately, not to do this interview.
Early the following year, I was asked to go and see Robert Fellows, the Queen's Secretary, and Robert decided to tell me how they'd been thinking for some time of the Queen's Christmas broadcast, which was traditionally done by a BBC team and then distributed to all other broadcasters, that it was time that ITV should do it for the next 3 years. To which I said, Robert, so the motto here is we don't get mad, we get even. No, Will, it's absolutely not that at all. I said, looks an awful lot like it, Robert. That is indeed what happened.
Diana, Princess of Wales, has died after a car crash in Paris. She was taken to hospital in the early hours of the morning. Surgeons tried for 2 hours to save her life, but she died at 3 o'clock.
Diana's death was one of the biggest TV news stories of all time. The schedules were given over to outpourings of widespread grief. The palace was silent. The royal family stayed in Balmoral, only venturing out of their stony retreat for the Sunday service. It was a mistake.
Diana's death is an interesting example of an occasion when the palace, who try to keep a tight control on the way that they're perceived, on the way the Queen's perceived and other members of the royal family are perceived, and who must agonize all the time about what to do, what not to do. It was one of the occasions when they were wrong-footed, because they decided that they didn't have to respond, and in the age of television, you either respond immediately or it's too late. And they were too late.
After a few days, the Queen and the Duke bowed to pressure, not least from Downing Street, and returned early to London. Their arrival helped deflect some of the worst criticism. To further improve the situation, it had been arranged that the Queen would broadcast to the nation. A draft script was sent to Downing Street, as is usual when the Queen makes a speech. Tony Blair's press secretary, Alistair Campbell, felt the public mood was still volatile.
When Alistair Campbell got the first draft of the broadcast, he was appalled. It was very cold and unemotional. And I think he'd expected that the palace people would have sort of learnt a lesson. And they hadn't learnt a lesson. So he asked Tony's permission to try and change it. And Tony said, yeah, it has to be done. You must change it.
According to Draper, Alistair Campbell believed the broadcast had to be live to have maximum impact.
When Alistair Campbell said this, the people around the Queen who were dealing with the broadcast said, well, the Queen does not do live. Alistair Campbell said, well, you know, she is on Friday. And again, you know, there was a bit of a tussle over it, but in the end, his arguments won through.
So what I say to you now, as your Queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart. First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being. In good times and bad, she never lost her capacity to smile and laugh, nor to inspire others with her warmth and kindness. I admired and respected her for her energy and commitment to others, and especially for her devotion to her 2 boys.
The humanising phrases in the speech, some of them came directly from Alistair. You know, the reference to her as a grandmother, the use of I, not we, which to us seems a very minor thing, but actually broke, you know, a lot of precedent for the Queen. You know, it wasn't an easy thing to sort of get the drafters of the speech to agree to.
I think it might have been as a grandmother. That might have come from Downing Street. But, you know, the impression always given is that Downing Street drives these things. Downing Street doesn't drive these things. Downing Street is informed as a matter of courtesy. The Queen does the driving. She is the head of state.
The gun carriage turns now into the grand processional route of the Mall.
The BBC was also unsure how to react to the funeral. Was this a formal state occasion or something unprecedented and beyond royal control?
There were a lot of meetings at the BBC about the tone to adopt during the funeral, and I got quite impatient with it and kept saying, look, you don't adopt a tone as the BBC, you don't adopt an attitude, you watch what's happening and you report it. That's the way to do it properly. And just wait till the morning of the funeral and see how people are reacting to it on the streets as the cortege goes past, and just let it happen. Silence from the mourners watching the million who've come here to London. Tears as it goes past. A few flowers still being thrown.
This is BBC Television News. Buckingham Palace has just announced the death of the Queen Mother. In a statement, the palace said the Queen Mother has died. BBC Television is broadcasting this special programme reporting the Queen Mother's death.
Despite years of preparation, the Queen Mother's death appeared to catch the BBC off guard.
I believe we have on the phone the Queen Mother's niece, Lady Margaret Rhodes.
A very difficult interview, and the absence of a black tie didn't help matters.
It must have been a very private moment,
yes,
Lady
Margaret. It was a very moving and very, very sad moment, but luckily it was wonderfully peaceful.
And without wishing to intrude too much, who was there?
No, I won't go into that. It was just a few members of the family, but the great thing was that the Queen was there.
And after you all came out, what happened then?
No, I'm sorry, I really don't want to go into those sort of details. I just want to say how much she'll be missed and how much she was loved.
The traditionalists were up in arms, others were more amused.
In Hyde Park, the mysterious disappearance of Peter Sissons is explained.
If the BBC was wrong-footed, the palace was now on sure ground. When it came to grief, the lesson had been learnt. This time, the mourning was no longer hidden behind palace walls, but was unashamedly paraded in front of the nation. After all, the loss of a beloved grandmother is something we can all understand and sympathise with.
Above all, she saw the funny side of life, and we laughed till we cried. And oh, how I shall miss those laughs. And the wonderful wisdom born of so much experience and of an innate sensitivity to life.
Sunday morning and the rehearsal for the Queen's Jubilee procession. Like his father almost 50 years earlier, David Dimbleby is on the lookout for the odd fact to embellish his commentary.
How are you? How did it go? All right.
Well, yes, I think it's gone jolly well so far.
Bit of trouble with is he all right? Is he?
The Jubilee and the part played in it by cameras highlight how much modern monarchy is dependent on television. It's not enough that the monarchy works, but it must be seen to work.
The degree of access which television in particular has is most important in terms of the future of the monarchy, because the monarchy has to be perceived to be doing something in order for it to be doing something. Perception is everything with this rather peculiar institution that we have in this country.
The monarchy needs exposure, but that comes with risks. Familiarity can engender affection, but it can undermine respect.
The danger for the monarchy, and I think this is why the Queen has always understood that the more that you get to know the monarchy, or the royal family, and the more human they appear, that's a double-edged sword. You know, yes, you like them more, but do you respect them more?
The evening before the climax of the Jubilee, and the Queen invited pop stars and the cameras into her garden. It was a trade-off. In exchange for access to a wider public and the whiff of modernity, the royal family blessed the BBC and the pop world with a sheen of respectability. The Jubilee was a resounding success for both monarchy and medium. The Queen received a massive upsurge in support, and these pictures undoubtedly contributed to it.
It's worth taking a close look at this coach. It was built to symbolise the victories of Great Britain in the 7 Years' War, which had just ended.
The BBC enjoyed big audiences and basked in the plaudits. The relationship has never been stronger. But that's no guarantee it'll stay that way. Television will inevitably poke its nose where it's not wanted.
That's television's job. I mean, television isn't meant to say, oh, we won't touch that because that's taboo. Of course television is going to press and press and press. So it will always be an awkward relationship, because the one thing that I think successful monarchy can't do is to open itself up, warts and all. It's a very intrusive medium. It's a very difficult medium to handle because it pokes its nose in where it's not wanted. And so I think that the relationship has been always awkward and difficult, and probably always will be.